She thought it would be a quick, quiet visit to the ER, just a shy girl trying to deal with an awkward, deeply personal problem. But the moment she stepped into the room, she had no idea the doctor behind the chart was more than just a physician. He was a secret millionaire, and the man who had already been watching her from afar, waiting for a chance to change both their lives forever. The fluorescent lights in the emergency room flickered above, casting a sterile glow on tired faces and aching bodies. Maria Alvarez sat in the farthest corner, huddling up as if trying to vanish into her oversized hoodie. Her hands rested protectively on her lower belly, fingers twitching with each wave of pain. She glanced around the room, her eyes worried as they took in a man coughing into his sleeve, a child sobbing in his mom's arms, and the receptionist tapping a pen on a clipboard. Every sound echoed loudly, so noisy, way too noisy. She ducked her head, focusing on a frayed seam in her jeans, trying to stay calm. She'd waited 3 days to come here. The discomfort started quietly, just a dull, nagging ache, but it's gotten worse, and now it's burning. She knew it was something private, something she wouldn't even say out loud to her sister, but she didn't have insurance, no regular doctor, and definitely no money to waste. Coming to the hospital was a last resort. It felt like giving up. A nurse calls her name, Maria Alvarez. She looks up, startled as if she'd been caught. She slowly stands, clutching her small purse with both hands, and follows the nurse down the narrow hallway. They pass closed doors and carts full of medical supplies before entering a small exam room. The nurse's voice is gentle but brisk. "Please change into the gown. The doctor will be with you soon." Maria nods, her throat dry. The curtain closes behind the nurse with a swish, leaving her alone. She stares at the gown, her fingers fumbling with the ties, wincing as she moves too quickly. The cold vinyl chair touches her skin, making her shiver. She hears footsteps, then a voice, soft and gentle. "May I come in?" She whispers. "Yes." The curtain pulls back, and a man steps inside. He's wearing a white coat over blue scrubs, with a calm, steady expression. His dark hair is neatly styled, and his badge reads. His smile is warm, not showy. "Good evening, Maria. I'm Dr. Theo Ramirez. I'll be taking care of you tonight. I understand you're in pain." She can't meet his eyes. Her cheeks flush as she mumbles. "Yeah, it's hurting down there." She gestures vaguely toward her belly. "It's bad. I didn't know where else to go." Dr. Theo Ramirez nods gently and pulls his chair closer, keeping his tone soft. "Thank you for telling me. I know this isn't easy to talk about, but you're safe here. You did the right thing by coming." Maria's eyes well up with a mix of relief and embarrassment. It's been a while since anyone spoke to her like that. He asks a series of questions about the pain, when it started, and if she's had anything like this before. She answers in bits and pieces. When he asks about her health insurance, she looks down. "I don't have any." Dr. Theo Ramirez doesn't pause. "That's okay. Let's focus on getting you better first. Then we'll talk about the next steps. We have financial aid programs here, so don't worry about that right now." He continues the exam, explaining each step clearly, never rushing or making her feel distant. Once finished, he stands, removes his gloves, and washes his hands at the sink. "It looks like this is a treatable infection. A course of antibiotics should clear it up. I'll also prescribe some pain relief. You need to drink plenty of water and rest." "All right." Maria nods, a tear rolling down her cheek. She quickly wipes it away. "Embarrassed I didn't want to come. I thought they'd just turn me away." Dr. Theo Ramirez leans against the counter, arms crossed. "You're not the first to feel that way. But the ER isn't just for emergencies. It's for people who need help and don't know where to turn." "I'm glad you came." Maria looks up and finally meets his eyes. There's something familiar in them, a warmth that makes her uneasy, but not in a bad way. It reminds her of something, though she can't quite place it. As he turns to leave, he adds, "I'll have a nurse bring your discharge papers and prescription. If you feel worse at any time, come back. You're important, Maria. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." With that, he leaves her there, stunned not by the diagnosis, but by the simple kindness of being treated like a person, not a burden. She looks down at her lap and takes a deep breath. Maybe the worst pain is over. Maybe something else is just beginning. A lab tech had just wheeled Maria out for some standard tests when Dr. Theo Ramirez returned to his workstation, rubbing the back of his neck. The ER was busier than usual tonight, but something about Maria lingered in his mind, her voice, the way she clutched her purse, her shy, yet quietly strong gaze. He opened her file to update notes and saw her full name, Maria Alvarez, 24 years old, of Hispanic origin, no insurance, lives in a low-income apartment near 8th Street. 8th Street. His fingers froze on the keyboard. A sharp, uninvited memory flashed through his mind 2 years ago. Pouring rain, his white coat soaked, his backpack slung over one shoulder, half broken. He was standing at the checkout of a corner grocery store, freezing, exhausted, and utterly broke. He'd just finished an overnight shift as a fourth-year med student. His feet ached. His mind was foggy. He was buying a pack of ramen and a cheap granola bar, hoping to stretch his last $7 until the end of the week. When the cashier rang it up, his card was declined twice. He remembered the heat rising to his ears. He told the cashier to void the sale, that he'd keep it as is, that he was fine. He wasn't. But then a soft voice came from behind him. "I got it." He turned and saw a girl in a store uniform, her name tag reading Maria. She looked young, around 22, with her dark hair braided. Her eyes met his, not with pity, but with calm. "It's just a couple of bucks." She shrugged. He tried to refuse, but she insisted. He mumbled thanks and stepped out into the rain, ramen and granola in hand, not sure what hurt more, his pride or the fact that someone saw him struggle. That receipt stayed in his coat pocket. Somehow, it never left. When he graduated, he tucked it into his wallet behind his driver's license as a quiet reminder that kindness still exists even when the world seems harsh. Now, looking at her medical record, he realized it was her Maria, the same name, the same quiet strength. His chest tightened, and he left his desk, pacing for a moment before heading back to her room. Just as the nurse was helping her back into bed, Maria still looked pale, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of the blanket. "How are you feeling, Dr. Theo Ramirez?" asked as he walked in. "A bit better," she replied softly. "They said the results will be in soon." He nodded and sat on the edge of a stool nearby, watching her for a moment, then carefully asked, "Did you ever work at a small grocery store near 8th Street? She blinked, surprised. "Yeah, I did night shifts there." "Why?" His smile was gentle. "You might not remember me, but I remember you." She tilted her head, unsure. "What do you mean?" He leaned back slightly, his voice calm but warm. 2 years ago, in the pouring rain, I was flat broke, exhausted, and trying to buy some ramen and a granola bar. My card got declined, and a girl in a green vest stepped in and paid for me. Maria's eyes widened. "Wait, that was you." He nodded. "I never forgot it. I kept the receipt. Still have it." Her cheeks turned red with embarrassment and disbelief. "It was nothing. Just $2. "Exactly," Dr. Theo Ramirez said quietly. "That night, I was at rock bottom, and a stranger reminded me that the world still has good people in it." Maria looked down at her hands, not knowing what to say. "I always meant to say a proper thank you," Dr. Theo Ramirez added. She laughed shakily. "Okay, so now we're even. I bought your ramen, and you helped save my ovaries." Dr. Theo Ramirez chuckled, the tension between them easing. "I guess you won." She smiled for the first time since walking into the ER, and in that small room, under the hum of fluorescent lights and beeping machines, something shifted. Not from some grand moment, but from kindness coming full circle. Two people who had crossed paths in hard times now found each other in very different circumstances. Maria kept her head down for the next few days. As soon as she got home from the ER, she looked up Dr. Theo Ramirez online, and what she found left her stunned. He's not just a doctor, he's one of the youngest co-founders of a tech startup focused on affordable healthcare and community access. His name shows up in magazines, interviews, and podcasts. The ER she went to is just a piece of what he's built. He's successful, smart, way out of her league, and she talked to him like he was just some kind stranger. That Monday, when the clinic called for a follow-up, she rescheduled, then canceled, then rescheduled again. On days she was sure Dr. Theo Ramirez wouldn't be on shift. She didn't want him to see her again, Not now that she knew who he was. Not when she's just Maria Alvarez, a part-time cashier and babysitter, with overdue rent and a borrowed car that won't start right. She picked up extra shifts at the grocery store and stayed away from the clinic nearby. Even though the pain lingered sometimes, she told herself it'd pass. She couldn't be the girl clinging to a kind face, especially one belonging to a millionaire in a white coat. But the world is smaller than we think. One rainy evening, she left the pharmacy after picking up meds for her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Calderon. The old woman's cane slipped on the wet sidewalk, and Maria looped her arm around her, slowly guiding her under the awning. The rain was coming down hard now, wind blowing it sideways. Maria had no umbrella, no jacket, just her faded work sweater. She draped it over the old woman's frail shoulders and stood close, shielding her while they waited for the bus that never came. She was chuckling with Mrs. Calderon about the storm when she heard a voice behind her. "You're always doing this." She turned and saw him there, standing under a dark umbrella, his scrubs half covered by a black overcoat. His eyes were on her, not the rain. Maria's heart sank. Dr. Ramirez. He didn't correct the title. It's Theo, and I'm the one who should be asking, "What are you doing out here soaked?" Maria tried to compose herself. "Just helping my neighbor. Her pharmacy. Just helping my neighbor. Her pharmacy doesn't deliver." He stepped closer, handing the umbrella to Mrs. Calderon without a word, then shrugging off his coat. Before she could protest, he draped it over Maria's shoulders. "You'll catch a cold," she murmured, embarrassed. "I'll survive," he said. They stood like that for a moment under the dim streetlight, wind rustling through the buildings, the scent of wet pavement rising around them. Theo looked at her. "Really looked," he said softly. "I wondered why you kept rescheduling your appointments. Now I know." Maria looked down. "I just didn't want to make things awkward." He tilted his head. "Why would it be awkward? Because you're you and I'm me." She waved a hand vaguely, still gripping the paper bag of meds. "I never even finished college. I live in a room rented from someone's aunt." "College? I live in a room rented from my closest friend, is 78 and has arthritis." Theo sighed, almost a laugh, but not mocking, just surprised. But he said, "You're the one standing in the rain for others." She looked at him, puzzled. He continued, "Maria, when I was in med school, I thought success was about money, influence, escaping the struggle. But then someone gave me $2 for a meal I couldn't afford, and that changed everything." Maria blushed and shifted her feet. "I didn't mean anything by it." "I know," he said. "That's what made it mean so much." They fell silent until the bus finally turned the corner. When it arrived, Theo helped Mrs. Calderon up the steps and waved to the driver to wait while she settled in. When he turned back, Maria was still holding his coat around her. "You don't have to avoid me," he said gently. "You're not less than anyone because of your job or your past." Maria bit her lip. "But guys like you don't end up with girls like me. So maybe guys like me have been looking in the wrong places." The rain started to let up. Maria exhaled slowly. Theo smiled softly and stepped back. "See you at your next follow-up." She hesitated, then nodded. As he walked away, she stood there, his coat still warm on her shoulders. She still didn't feel worthy. But maybe, just maybe, she could start believing she's not as small as she thought. Maria never stopped feeling like she was stepping into someone else's world. The hospital hallways, polished floors, quiet efficiency, all of it felt too clean, too far from the gritty reality of rent, groceries, and broken-down cars. She always kept it polite during follow-ups, answering questions and never lingering. But then things started happening. First, the bill that never came. She was worried sick, knowing she hadn't met the deductible, that her ER visit would cost more than she could afford. But no bill arrived. A month passed, then another. Finally, she went to the billing desk and asked. The clerk looked confused, typing away. "No outstanding balance under your name." Maria frowned. "That can't be right. It's all been taken care of." The kind woman said, "You're good to go." Maria walked out with a puzzled feeling in her chest. Then came the vitamins. One afternoon, she got home from work and found a small brown package at her door. Inside was a bottle of high-quality multivitamins with a note, "From your friends in the Community Health Initiative. No name, No return address. She held the bottle, her heart racing. It wasn't much, but it felt intentional. The final message came via email. She checked her inbox late one night after a long shift at the grocery store. Buried among spam and ads was a short message from an anonymous sender. No greeting, no signature, just one line and a link. You mentioned you like numbers. This might help. She clicked the link cautiously. It led to a nonprofit offering night classes in accounting and bookkeeping with scholarships for low-income applicants. The deadline was in 2 days. Maria stared at the screen, then at the sender's address. Unrecognizable, but something in the wording felt familiar, gentle. She almost applied, but the old voices in her head, whispering that she wasn't good enough, not smart enough, not meant for more, held her back. What if she failed? What if they laughed? She dropped out of community college to care for her sick mom. Her dreams had rusted over in the corners of life. Still, she couldn't ignore the small warmth blooming in her chest. Someone saw her. Someone thought she was worth investing in, but that realization scared her. She wasn't ready for hope. She wasn't ready for kindness that could turn into hurt. The next day, she opened an email and drafted a message to the clinic. Subject: cancel follow-up. Thanks for everything, but I've decided not to continue the program. Please cancel my future appointments. I'm feeling better now. She hovered over the send button for a minute before clicking. 2 hours later, she got a reply. Not from the clinic receptionist, but from Theo. Subject: re-cancel follow-up. Dear Maria, I respect your choice of what's best for you, but don't let fear overshadow your future. You once showed simple kindness to a stranger. You believed he was worth helping, even when he had nothing. I'm just returning the favor. Don't miss out just because you think you don't deserve it. You're not a charity case. You're the one who lit a small light in a dark moment. Let me do the same for you. Theo. Maria read the email 3 times. She leaned back in her chair, hands slightly shaking. He didn't just remember the story. He remembered her, the girl behind the counter, the girl who smiled without expecting anything in return. She wasn't a case or a project. She was a person. She closed her eyes, and she was a person. She closed her eyes and sighed. After weeks, she opened the scholarship application page again. She started filling it out. Name, address, story. When asked about her motivation, she wrote, "Because someone believed I could." And this time, she hit send. It was supposed to be just a walk. Maria had her first day off in weeks. She wandered the city aimlessly, sipping cheap iced coffee, letting the rare Southern California breeze hit her face. She hadn't meant to stop by the community center near Boyle Heights, but something about the crowd gathered there caught her eye. Bright banners fluttered above a pop-up outdoor exhibit, Health Beyond Medicine, stories of healing. Curious, she stepped closer. It was buzzing. Kids were drawing in one corner. A mobile clinic was parked on the edge, and volunteers were handing out health kits. Along the main path were framed photos on easels, each with neat handwritten captions. One showed a teen boy helping an elderly woman cross the street. Another captured a young nurse braiding a patient's hair. Each image was a moment simple, everyday, yet full of quiet power. Maria slowly walked past them, feeling an unusual tug. She'd always thought healing was sterile, something that happened with medicine and machines. But these photos told a different story, and then she saw it. The photo was a bit grainy, clearly from a store security camera. She recognized the scene immediately, even after 2 years. It was her. She was partially turned away, one arm extended toward the card reader. In front of her was a young guy in faded jeans and a hoodie, holding a pack of ramen. She stared at the caption. Sometimes healing starts with a stranger seeing your hunger and not looking away. Her breath caught in her throat. The world blurred. It wasn't about the $2. It was that someone remembered. That someone thought it mattered. Tears welled up, hot and sudden. She stepped back, overwhelmed, and turned to see Theo standing a few feet away, quietly watching her. He wasn't smug or proud, just there. Maria quickly wiped her eyes. "Did you put that up?" He nodded. "I didn't have the right to use my photo," she said, though her voice trembled more with emotion than accusation. Theo said gently. It was from a public camera. I requested it years ago. I never thought I'd use it. But when we planned this exhibit, I knew that moment changed me. Maria clenched her fists. You're acting like I saved your life. For $2. Theo smiled softly. I was for $2. Even that ramen wasn't good. Theo smiled softly. I was a broke intern, hadn't eaten a real meal in a day. But it wasn't about the ramen. It was that someone saw me and didn't treat me like a burden. Maria looked away and blinked quickly. I didn't mean to be a hero. You're not, he said. You're just kind. And that, Maria, means more than you know. There was a long silence between them. Finally, Maria asked, why did you keep that receipt all these years? Theo pulled out his wallet and unfolded a faded thermal paper receipt, carefully laminated. He handed it to her. I kept it to remind myself why I do this, why I became a doctor, why I started that healthcare startup. I needed something to hold on to, something beyond profit or fame. That receipt is my compass. Maria stared at the thin paper, her name scribbled on the store line, ink blurred. You built an empire, she whispered, on a grocery receipt. I built it for what it meant. Maria looked up at him, and for the first time she let herself really see him, not just as the doctor or the CEO or the stranger in the rain, but as the man who was once a boy, hungry and invisible, until someone gave him a moment of dignity. She said softly, I thought you were just being nice to me out of guilt. I'm being nice, he replied, but never out of pity. Then why? Because I see your strength, Theo said, and because I still believe in a world where $2 and a little courage can make something extraordinary. Maria pressed the receipt to her chest, and for the first time since she walked into the ER, she smiled not shyly, not doubtfully, but like someone finally stepping into her own story. It started with a whisper, a post on a gossip blog buried among celebrity rumors and product ads. Headline from checkout counter to riches. The grocery girl catches a millionaire's eye. Maria would have missed it entirely if not for a message from a coworker. She clicked the link out of curiosity. Then regret punched her in the gut. Clearly, someone had been watching them. The post had a blurry photo of her outside the health exhibit, standing near Theo, her face partially turned away. Clearly, someone had been watching them. The article mocked her background, her humble look, her job at the grocery store. Worse were the comments, she must be good at more than just bagging groceries. Typical guy falling for the sob story of a poor girl. Let's see how long she lasts. The excitement faded. Maria felt her hands go cold. She barely remembered setting her phone down. Those words burned not because they were true, but because they echoed every doubt she'd buried, every whisper she'd told herself in the mirror. She didn't belong in his world. She was just a fluke. The next day, she called in sick, then sick again, then took unpaid leave. She deactivated her social media accounts. She stopped responding to messages from coworkers and ignored calls from Theo's assistant when they came. She spent the next 3 days curled up on the couch, phone off, lights dim, chest aching. The warmth she'd started to feel, that fragile sense of belonging, shattered under the weight of those cruel assumptions. She hadn't even realized she'd begun believing in herself again until it broke. Then, on Wednesday morning, her landlord buzzed her apartment. A package for you, he said, holding a plain brown box. No sender label, just her name written in neat, firm handwriting. She took it to the kitchen table and slowly opened it. Inside was a small white jewelry box. She held her breath, not because it was jewelry, but because of what was folded inside the receipt. Now faded, still creased. The same grocery receipt from 2 years ago, neatly laminated, resting on soft velvet. Underneath was a handwritten note on thick cream paper. She read aloud, her voice shaky that night. You gave me $2. I've kept that receipt all this time to remind myself of the world I believe in. Today, I'm giving it back in exchange for 2 things, faith and the chance to be loved. No name, no signature. But she knew. Maria held the note for a long time, her fingers tracing the edges. She felt something stir in her chest. Not defiance, not even courage, just clarity. People always talked about her looks, about what she deserved or didn't. But in this quiet moment, with the past neatly folded in a box on the table, She understood what mattered. She hadn't asked for attention. She'd reached out to someone, and that small gesture came back not as glory, but as grace. She pressed the receipt to her heart, closed her eyes. No more hiding. No more apologizing for being kind. For the first time in days, Maria stood up, walked to the window, and let the light in. Maria stood outside the hospital for 10 minutes before she could move. The automatic doors loomed like a gateway to a past she wasn't sure she was ready to face again. But the memory of that small receipt box, still tucked in her bag, gave her strength. She stepped inside. The hallway buzzed with activity. Nurses hurried by. Phones rang. Monitors beeped in their familiar rhythm. But this time, it felt different. She wasn't here to blend into the crowd. She was here to say something that mattered. A staff member recognized her from previous visits and directed her to the lounge. Theo was bent over a file, scribbling notes. When he looked up and saw her, his eyebrows raised in surprise. But not judgment, just quiet joy. "You came," he said simply. Quiet joy. "You came," he said simply. "I came, just quiet joy." "You came," he said simply. "I came," Maria replied, her voice soft. "I had to." Theo closed the file and gestured to a chair, but Maria stayed standing, gripping her bag strap. "I'm still scared," she said, forcing herself to meet his eyes. His eyes. About people thinking you're not good enough, about becoming someone you'll regret one day. He didn't interrupt, just waited. But she continued, her voice steadier now. "I realize something. I'm scared of a lot of things, but I'm not scared of you. And I don't want to run from someone who sees something in me that I can't see myself." For a moment, silence enveloped them, full but easy. Then, Theo stood and moved closer, not reaching for her, just being there. "I don't need you to not be afraid," he said. "Fear is human, but I'd be honored to walk beside you as you learn to trust again." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small brochure, titled in both Spanish and English, Community, Health, Education, Support, Dignity. "We're expanding the program," he explained. "Free clinics, community education, mentoring. We need someone who understands both sides of the story, who can reach people not through degrees, but through kindness. Would you consider helping me build it?" Maria blinked. "Work with you." He nodded. "Not because I owe you, not because you owe me, but because the world needs more people like you at the table." He extended his hand, not as a doctor, not as a millionaire, but simply as a man making an offer. Maria stared at his hand, then slowly raised hers. She hesitated for a second, then placed her palm in his warm, steady one. "I'll try," she whispered. He smiled, not triumphantly, but like someone who just witnessed a door opening and light pouring in. Light pouring in. They stood together in the quiet corner of the hospital, two people who had brushed paths over a forgotten receipt, now holding something far greater, a chance not to save each other, but to rise together. A gentle breeze rustled through the courtyard of the new community health center, stirring the ribbons draped over the double doors. The sign above read, "Centro de Bienestar Maria Esperanza," not officially named after her, but everyone knew who inspired the heart of this place. Maria stood near the entrance, adjusting her blouse and smoothing her skirt with trembling fingers. Not from fear this time, but from awe. A year ago, she could barely afford a doctor's visit. Now, she was standing as the newest member of the community outreach team, welcoming families who reminded her of herself, worried, uncertain, but holding quiet hope. Kids ran between the folding chairs. Community leaders, doctors, and volunteers gathered around the stage. And at the center was Theo in a button-up shirt, sleeves rolled up, his smile proud yet humble. As he stepped to the mic, the crowd quieted. "Good evening," he began, his voice even, eyes scanning the faces. "A year ago, we dreamed of a center that doesn't just treat illness, but restores dignity. Today, that dream stands before us, not just in walls or medical charts, but in people, especially in one woman who once hesitated to ask for help, but now reaches out to others in need. She didn't come to my clinic as a patient. She walked in as a mirror, reminding me why I started all of this." He stepped down from the podium and gently took her hand. I want to say this not as a doctor or a founder, but as the man honored to witness you becoming exactly the person you were meant to be," he said, looking into her eyes. "We met because you believed someone else was worth helping. Tonight, I ask you to believe that about yourself." Maria blinked back tears, not from pain or shame, but from something much deeper. She squeezed his hand, nodding without a word, because some truths don't need to be spoken to be real. After the ceremony, as the sun set, casting a golden glow over the sidewalks, Maria and Theo slipped away from the crowd. They walked down the familiar street with its small shops and faded murals until they reached a modest grocery store at the corner. The same store. Maria stood in front of it, silent for a long moment. "It's funny," she said, reaching into her purse. "I never meant to keep this." She unfolded the yellowed receipt, the one for $217 from 2 years ago. The ink was faded, but the memory remained. "I almost threw it away so many times. It was just ramen. Just $2, but I kept it. Maybe because I needed to believe I'd done one right thing amid all the chaos." Theo gently took the paper, holding it like a sacred object. "You did," he said, "and that day, you changed the course of my life. Not with money, but with the way you looked at me when you handed it over. Like you saw me, like I mattered." Maria smiled, the kind that comes from inside. "It's strange," she said. "I thought I'd always be the side character in someone else's story, but you make me feel like I could be more." "You already are," Theo replied. "I'm just lucky to have noticed." They stood there, surrounded by the sounds of carts and passing cars. Nothing glamorous, nothing perfect, just real. Then, without fanfare, Theo took her hand again. "So," he said with a soft smile, "shall we grab something? I feel like I owe you a real meal." Maria laughed, light and unguarded. "Only if I get to keep the receipt." They walked in together, past the checkout where it all began, through the simple aisles that had become beautiful through memory, and into a future neither had planned, but both quietly hoped for. Sometimes healing doesn't come from medicine. Sometimes it starts with a small act of kindness, a shared silence, and two people who remember what it feels like to be seen and choose to move forward together. Through this story, we're reminded of the quiet strength it takes to show up for someone, especially when life has given you every reason to walk away. It's about how healing doesn't always arrive in grand gestures, but in the simple act of staying, of listening, of being human in a world that often rushes past pain. If this journey touched your heart, consider standing behind our main character. They've taken a brave first step, but the road ahead still asks for courage, for forgiveness, and maybe for someone to walk it with them. What would you say to them now? What advice would you give? Drop it in the comments. We'll be reading every word. And if stories like these remind you of your own quiet battles, your silent victories, or the people who helped you through them, then don't walk away just yet. Subscribe to Touching Tales Hub for more heartwarming stories that celebrate kindness, resilience, and second chances. Because sometimes the right story at the right time can be the lifeline someone never knew they needed. We'll be here, waiting to share the next chapter with you.